My sister, Anya. Even the way her name tasted in my mouth was different than mine. Sharp, foreign, a little dangerous. Mine, Maya, plain, solid, reliable. Like the concrete slab of the life I was supposed to build. Anya was dynamite. A goddamn stick of dynamite with a hair trigger fuse. It wasn't a slow burn, her arrival. It was an explosion. 5 years I had mom and dad to myself. 5 years of being their star. The quiet one. The easy one. Then Anya barged in, screaming, clawing, demanding every drop of attention in the room. I was 10, standing in the fluorescent glare of Miller's grocery, gripping the handle of the shopping cart like it was a lifeline. Mom was examining tomatoes, her brow furrowed in that way that meant bills were piling up. Anya, all of 5 years old and radiating pure, unadulterated fury, was fixated on a rack of bubble gum, each piece encased in shiny, tempting cellophane. "No, Anya," Mom said, her voice already laced with a weariness that had become Anya's constant companion. "We have sweets at home. You don't need it. Want. Now!" Anya's face crumpled, a masterpiece of melodramatic despair. She didn't just whine, she weaponized it. A high-pitched, piercing wail that echoed through the aisles, turning heads and drawing stares. I could feel the heat of shame prickling my skin. "Anya, please," Mom pleaded, her voice barely audible above the racket. She tried to pull Anya away, but Anya went limp, a dead weight collapsing onto the sticky linoleum floor. And then the screaming started. Full-throated, guttural screams that vibrated in my teeth. People were staring now, muttering, whispering. I wanted to disappear, to crawl into the nearest box of cereal and vanish. Mom's face was flushed, her eyes darting around as if searching for an escape route. "I hate you. You never let me have anything," Anya shrieked, kicking her legs against the floor, her little red shoes leaving dirty streaks on the linoleum. That was Anya, chaos incarnate. And that grocery store tantrum? Just the opening act. A taste of the symphony of destruction she would conduct for the rest of our lives. I knew, even then, standing there clutching that shopping cart, that things would never be the same. That my life, the quiet, predictable life I had known, was over. Anya had arrived, and the earthquake had begun. And I, Maya, was just waiting for the aftershocks. Because with Anya, there were always aftershocks. The screaming in the grocery store was just a warm-up. As we got older, Anya's outbursts became more frequent, more intense. Her moods swung like a broken pendulum, slamming from manic glee to incandescent rage in a heartbeat. One minute she'd be building elaborate dollhouses out of shoeboxes. The next she'd be tearing them down with a ferocity that scared me. School was a battleground. Anya couldn't focus, couldn't follow rules. She'd disrupt class, throw tantrums, even bite other kids. The principal's office became a second home. Mom and Dad were constantly called in, their faces etched with worry and exhaustion. Then came the day they took Anya to Dr. Albright, a child psychologist with a gentle voice and eyes that seemed to see right through you. When they came back, the air in the house was thick with unspoken tension. They called me into the living room, their faces grave. "Maya," Dad began, his voice unusually soft. "We need to talk to you about Anya." Mom squeezed his hand, her knuckles white. "Doctor?" "Albright thinks Anya has something called ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder." One nodded slowly, not really understanding. "What does that mean?" "It means her brain works a little differently," Mom explained, her voice carefully measured. "It makes it hard for her to control her impulses, to focus. That's why she acts out." A wave of something like relief washed over me. There was a reason for the chaos, for the screaming, for the constant disruption, but the relief was quickly followed by a cold dread. Because I knew, deep down, that this diagnosis wouldn't fix anything. It would just change the rules. "So, what happens now?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Dad sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. We need to be patient, Maya. Extra patient. Anya needs our support. We need to understand that she's not doing this on purpose. Mom reached out and took my hand, her touch surprisingly cold. We need your help, sweetie. You're the older sister. You have to be understanding. That was it. The unspoken command, the weight of responsibility shifting onto my shoulders. I was 10 years old, and I was already being asked to be a caregiver, a therapist, a buffer between Anya and the world. And that was how it started. Everything became about Anya, her needs, her moods, her outbursts. The house revolved around her, a chaotic, unpredictable orbit. And I became the invisible planet, spinning silently in the background, my own needs and desires fading into the periphery. I wasn't neglected. Not exactly. I had food, clothes, a roof over my head, but compared to the constant, laser-like focus on Anya, it felt like I was fading away. Like my voice was getting quieter, my presence less important. Anya got the best therapists, the special tutors, the endless stream of medication trials. She got excused from chores, from responsibilities. She got away with things I would have been grounded for weeks for. And I got the quiet, disappointed looks when I complained. The reminders to be understanding, to be patient, to be a good sister. The diagnosis didn't change Anya. It just gave her, and my parents, a new excuse. And it cemented my place in the family dynamic, the responsible one, the understanding one, the one who always had to sacrifice. I started to resent Anya, a deep, poisonous resentment that festered in my heart. I knew it wasn't fair. I knew she couldn't help it. But knowing didn't make it hurt any less. The divide had begun. Anya, the sun around which everything revolved, and me, Maya, the distant, forgotten moon, forever orbiting in her shadow, and the darkness was getting closer. Years bled into each other, a monotonous cycle of Anya's highs and lows, punctuated by my own increasing frustration. Some weeks, she'd be almost normal, helping with chores, doing her homework, even managing a civil conversation with me. Those weeks were like a fragile truce, a brief respite from the constant turmoil, but they never lasted. I remember one afternoon when I was 16. I came home from school, exhausted from a grueling calculus test, to find Anya sitting at the kitchen table, actually doing her math homework. Her brow was furrowed in concentration, her tongue peeking out from the corner of her mouth. "Hey, Anya," I said, surprised. "How's it going?" She looked up and smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile that lit up her face. "Pretty good, actually. I think I'm finally getting this algebra stuff." For a moment, a crazy, impossible hope flickered inside me. Maybe things were finally turning around. Maybe Anya was finally learning to manage everything. Maybe we could actually be sisters, not just combatants in a never-ending war for attention. But a week later, that hope was brutally extinguished. I was in my room, headphones on, buried in a history textbook, trying to memorize the dates of the French Revolution. Suddenly, a deafening crash from downstairs ripped through the music. My heart leaped into my throat. I ripped off my headphones and ran to the living room. Anya was standing in front of the TV, her face contorted with rage. Mom was cowering against the wall, her hands raised defensively. Scattered around them were shards of glass and the mangled remains of a ceramic vase, one of Mom's prized possessions. "I don't care about stupid school," Anya screamed, her voice raw with fury. "You can't make me go. Anya, honey, please," Mom pleaded, her voice trembling. "You need to finish high school. It's important for your future." "My future? What future? I don't want any future," Anya shrieked, grabbing a nearby book and hurling it across the room. It narrowly missed Mom's head. I sighed, a weary, defeated sigh that came from the depths of my soul. Just another day in our house. Just another reminder that Anya would always be Anya, a force of destruction that we were powerless to control. I went back to my room, put my headphones back on, and cranked up the music. I needed to block out the noise, the screaming, the constant tension. I needed to focus on my own life, on my own future. Because if I didn't, I was afraid I would drown in Anya's chaos. When I turned 17, the pressure intensified. College applications loomed, and I was determined to escape, to build a life for myself far away from Anya's orbit. But Anya seemed determined to sabotage my efforts. One evening, I was at my desk, deep in a practice SAT test, my brow furrowed in concentration. Suddenly, ear-splitting music blasted through the walls, shaking the very foundations of the house. It was Anya, of course. I stormed into her room, my anger barely contained. "Can you turn that down?" "I'm trying to study," Anya smirked, a cruel, triumphant smirk that made my blood boil. "Boo-hoo," she mocked. "Poor Maya needs to study." "Well, I need to listen to music." "Deal with it." "Anya, please," I pleaded, my voice trembling with frustration. "This is really important. I need to get a good score on this test." "So, that's your problem," she said, turning up the volume even louder. "Maybe if you weren't such a nerd, you wouldn't have to study so hard." I went to our parents, hoping they would finally intervene, hoping they would finally put my needs first for once. But their response left me speechless. "Honey," Mom said, her voice apologetic, "you know your sister has trouble controlling herself. Try to be understanding." Dad nodded, his eyes filled with a weary resignation. "Maybe you could study at the library?" "We don't want to upset Anya." I couldn't believe it. "But what about me?" "Don't my needs matter?" Mom patted my hand, her touch perfunctory. "Of course they do, sweetie. But Anya's condition makes things difficult for her. We all need to make allowances." I went back to my room, fuming. It was always about Anya. Always. My dreams, my aspirations, my future, all secondary to Anya's whims. A few weeks later, Anya dropped a bombshell at dinner. "I want to go live with Grandma," she announced, her voice casual, as if she were ordering a pizza. Mom and Dad exchanged worried looks. "Are you sure, honey?" Mom asked, her voice trembling slightly. "That's a big change." Anya nodded, her eyes gleaming with a strange, unsettling light. "Grandma said I could come any time. She'll let me do whatever I want." I held my breath, hardly daring to hope. To my surprise, my parents agreed. "Maybe a change of scenery would be good for everyone," Dad said, his voice filled with a desperate optimism. As Anya packed her bags, she cornered me in the hallway, her eyes narrowed, her voice laced with venom. "Don't think you're getting rid of me," she hissed. "Grandma's loaded, you know. She'll spoil me rotten and leave me everything in her will. You'll be working your ass off in college while I'm set for life." I just rolled my eyes, trying to hide the flicker of fear that ran through me. "Whatever, Anya. Just go." For the next 6 months, our house was peaceful. I could finally focus on my studies without constant interruptions. I aced my SATs and got accepted into state university, in a city 3 hours away. Freedom was finally within my grasp, but the darkness was still lurking. I knew, deep down, that Anya's absence wouldn't last forever. And when she came back, she would be even more volatile, more destructive than before, because that was Anya's way. She always came back, and she always made sure to leave a trail of wreckage in her wake. I'd been at State U for a few months, finally starting to breathe. The campus was sprawling, filled with new faces, new ideas, a sense of possibility I hadn't felt in years. I was taking classes I loved, making friends who didn't know about Anya, who didn't treat me like the responsible one. It was a taste of freedom, a chance to define myself outside the context of my family. Then came the call. It was Mom, and she sounded shattered. "Maya," she said, her voice trembling. "It's Anya. She's back home." My stomach clenched. I knew it. I knew it wouldn't last. "What happened?" I asked, my voice flat. "Your grandmother. She couldn't handle Anya anymore," Mom sobbed. "She said she was too disobedient, always causing trouble. She even blamed us for bad parenting. Now she won't talk to any of us. I closed my eyes, feeling a mix of frustration and a twisted sense of vindication. I'm sorry, Mom. That must be tough. It is, she admitted, her voice thick with tears. We're trying everything, taking her to a new psychologist, giving her whatever she wants. We're hoping it'll help. And then came the blow. The one I should have seen coming, but somehow still managed to blindside me. Maya, sweetie, about your college expenses, Mom said, her voice hesitant. We can't help you anymore. All our money is going towards Anya's treatment and, well, her demands. You'll need to support yourself from now on. The world tilted. My carefully constructed sense of stability crumbled around me. I couldn't breathe. What? I managed to choke out. But I have tuition, rent, books. I know, sweetie, Mom said, her voice filled with a false sympathy that made my skin crawl. But Anya needs us. We have to prioritize. We're so sorry, Maya. We know this is hard. The line went dead. I just sat there, staring at the phone, trying to process what had just happened. Once again, Anya had managed to upend my life without even being present. My education, my future, sacrificed at the altar of Anya's needs. Rage, cold and sharp, flooded through me. But underneath the rage was a deep, gnawing fear. I didn't know how I was going to make it. I didn't know how I was going to pay for everything. But I wasn't about to let this derail me. I refused to be a victim. I would find a way. First things first, I needed a job. I pounded the pavement for days, filling out applications, enduring endless interviews. Finally, I landed a part-time gig at the local diner, the Greasy Spoon, flipping burgers and slinging coffee to grumpy truckers. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. Then, on a whim, I decided to call Grandma my grandma, not Anya's temporary benefactor. I hadn't spoken to her in a while. Grandma? I said, my voice trembling slightly. It's Maya. Maya, darling. Her voice was warm, a soothing balm on my raw nerves. How are you? How's college? I hesitated, then spilled everything. The call from Mom, the financial cutoff, the diner job, the overwhelming sense of despair. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Grandma spoke, her voice firm. Of course I'll help you, dear, she said. It's the least I can do after everything you've been through. Tears streamed down my face. Thank you, Grandma, I choked out. Thank you so much. Nonsense, darling, she said. You deserve it. You've always been a good girl, Maya. You deserve to have a chance. And just like that, a lifeline appeared. True to her word, Grandma started sending me money each month, enough to cover my rent and some of my tuition. She even visited me a few times, bringing homemade cookies and a fierce, unwavering support that kept me going. During one of her visits, we were sitting in my cramped dorm room, sipping tea from mismatched mugs. You know, Maya, she said, sipping her tea. Her eyes filled with a deep sadness. I feel guilty about Anya. I thought I could handle her, that I could make a difference. But I was wrong. It's not your fault, Grandma, I said, squeezing her hand. Anya is Anya, she sighed. Still, I'm glad I can help you. You deserve it, sweetheart. You deserve to have a life of your own. Those years in college were tough, a constant balancing act between classes, work, and crippling anxiety about money. But they were also liberating. For the first time, I was free from Anya's shadow. I made friends who saw me for who I was, not just as Anya's sister. I studied hard, driven by a fierce determination to prove everyone wrong. And I even started dating a bit, tentatively dipping my toes into the waters of romance. I was building a life, brick by brick, a life that was mine and mine alone. And no matter what Anya threw at me, I was determined to hold on to it. After graduation, I landed a decent job as a junior accountant at a mid-sized firm in the same city. It wasn't my dream job, but it paid the bills and allowed me to finally start paying back Grandma for her generosity. I found a small apartment, decorated it with thrift store finds and hand-me-downs, and settled into a routine. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I made friends at work, went to happy hours, even joined a book club. I was building a support system, a chosen family that helped fill the void left by my own. I did visit my parents occasionally, mostly out of a sense of obligation, but Anya was never around. "She's out with friends," Mom would say, wringing her hands, her eyes filled with a familiar anxiety. "She's been gone for days now. We can barely keep track of her anymore. Always with different boys too," Dad would chime in, shaking his head. "There's Jake, or was it John? And then there's that Mike fellow." I raised an eyebrow. "And you're okay with this?" Mom shrugged helplessly. "What can we do? It's just how she is. The psychologist says it's part of her condition." I bit my tongue to keep from saying what I really thought, that they were enabling her, that they were letting her get away with everything. But what was the point? They wouldn't listen. They never did. During another visit, I found Mom crying in the kitchen. "What's wrong?" I asked, alarmed. She wiped her eyes with a dish towel. "It's Anya. She's been gone for 2 weeks this time. We don't know where she is, or who she's with." I felt a pang of worry, despite everything. "Have you called the police?" Dad shook his head. "We did once before. She came back on her own and was furious with us for reporting her missing. Said we were trying to control her life." I left that day feeling frustrated and sad. It was clear that nothing had changed. Anya was still the center of their world, no matter how badly she behaved. As I drove back to my apartment, I couldn't help but feel grateful for the life I'd built for myself. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Time flies when you're building your own life. Before I knew it, 3 years had passed since I'd graduated college. I was settling into my career, making new friends, and finally feeling like I had some stability. Then came the phone call that threw me for a loop. "Maya, it's Mom." "You'll never guess what's happened." My heart sank. This couldn't be good. "What?" I asked, bracing myself. "Anya's getting married." Mom's voice was brimming with an excitement that felt unsettling. I nearly dropped the phone. "Married? Anya?" "Yes. Can you believe it? She just told us. The wedding's in 2 months. You'll come, won't you?" Still in shock, I mumbled an agreement. I had to see this to believe it. The day of the wedding arrived, and I flew back home, feeling a strange mix of dread and morbid curiosity. As I helped Anya get ready, she was surprisingly calm, almost serene. But there was a gleam in her eyes that made me uneasy. "Mom and Dad are paying for our honeymoon," she said smugly, as the hairdresser fussed with her veil. 2 weeks in Bali, first class, all the way. I bit my tongue. "Of course they were. That's nice of them," I managed. Anya smirked. "Well, they owe me. After all the crap I've been through." I wanted to point out that most of that crap was of her own making, but I held back. It was her wedding day, after all. When I finally met Anya's fiancé, Mark, I was taken aback. He was nothing like I'd imagined. Tall, handsome, and at least 10 years older than Anya, he exuded an air of calm confidence that seemed out of place. "It's great to finally meet you, Maya," he said, shaking my hand, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Anya's told me so much about you." I raised an eyebrow at Anya, wondering what exactly she'd told him. To my surprise, the wedding went off without a hitch. Anya looked radiant, and for once, she seemed genuinely happy. As I watched them exchange vows, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe this really would be the turning point for her. Maybe Mark could be the one to finally bring stability into her life. At the reception, Mom cornered me by the punch bowl, her eyes shining with pride. "Isn't this wonderful, Maya?" she gushed. "Anya's really landed on her feet. Mark's so successful, and he clearly adores her." I nodded, sipping my drink. "It's great, Mom. I'm happy for her." And then came the kicker, the predictable, yet still infuriating comment that shattered my fragile peace. "You know, sweetie," Mom said, her voice conspiratorial, "maybe it's time you started thinking about settling down, too. You're not getting any younger." I nearly choked on my punch. "Mom! I'm only 26. She patted my arm, oblivious to my irritation. "I know, dear. But look at Anya. She's really got it all figured out now." As I flew back to my city the next day, I couldn't shake a nagging feeling. Despite everything, I genuinely hoped Anya had found happiness. But a small part of me, the part that had learned to expect the worst, wondered how long it would last. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that whatever happened, it would somehow, eventually, affect me. The honeymoon, it turned out, was just the beginning of a very long, very destructive storm. Life went on. I threw myself into work, burying myself in spreadsheets and financial reports, trying not to dwell on my family's dynamics. I dated casually, but nothing ever seemed to click. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was carrying too much baggage, too much resentment, to truly open myself up to someone. Then, about a year after Anya's wedding, something unexpected happened. I met Tom. He was the complete opposite of Mark. Younger, less polished, with a goofy sense of humor and a genuine kindness that radiated from him like sunshine. We met at a local coffee shop, both waiting in line for our morning caffeine fix. He spilled his latte all over my favorite skirt, apologized profusely, and offered to buy me a new one. I laughed, charmed by his awkwardness, and we ended up talking for hours. We hit it off immediately. He was kind, funny, and actually listened when I talked. He didn't try to fix me or offer unsolicited advice. He just listened, really listened, with an empathy that was disarming. For the first time, I felt like I'd found someone who saw me for who I really was, flaws and all. He wasn't intimidated by my family history or by my guarded heart. He chipped away at my defenses, slowly, patiently, until I finally let him in. And when I did, it was like the sun had finally broken through the clouds. 2 years flew by in a whirlwind of dates, laughter, and deepening love. Tom became my best friend, my confidant, my anchor in the storm. He knew about Anya, about my strained relationship with my parents, about all the baggage I carried, and he loved me anyway. Then, on a crisp autumn evening, as we walked through a park bathed in golden light, Tom got down on one knee. He pulled out a small velvet box, opened it to reveal a sparkling diamond ring, and looked up at me, his eyes shining with love. "Maya," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "will you marry me?" Tears of joy streamed down my face. "Yes!" I cried, throwing my arms around him. "Yes, yes, yes." As I said yes, I felt like my life was finally falling into place. All the pain, all the struggles, all the sacrifices, it had all led to this moment. I had found my happiness. I had found my home. Planning my wedding to Tom was like a dream. For once, I was the center of attention, and it felt amazing. I was determined to make it perfect. A day that was all about us and our love. Of course, I invited my family. Despite everything, they were still my parents, and Anya was still my sister. I hoped that maybe, just maybe, this happy occasion would bring us all together, would heal some of the wounds of the past. When Anya showed up at the venue, she was alone. A knot formed in my stomach. "Where's Mark?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. Anya shrugged. "Couldn't make it." "Is everything okay?" I pressed, my anxiety rising. "It's fine," she snapped, her eyes flashing with anger. "Can we drop it?" I backed off, not wanting to start an argument on my wedding day. But later, I overheard Mom and Dad talking in hushed tones near the buffet table. "I'm worried about Anya and Mark," Mom was saying, her voice filled with concern. "They're fighting all the time now. Well, it's not her fault, Dad said, his voice defensive. She's just high-spirited. Mark needs to be more understanding. I walked away, shaking my head. Some things never change. The ceremony was beautiful, everything I dreamed of. Tom's eyes shone with love as we said our vows, and for a while I forgot all about the family drama. But at the reception, Anya made sure she couldn't be ignored. She got drunk, loudly flirted with Tom's friends, and even tried to give a speech that quickly devolved into a rant about how unfair her life had been. I gritted my teeth and plastered on a smile, determined not to let her ruin my day. Tom, bless him, stuck by my side, squeezing my hand supportively as Anya was dragged off the dance floor by our embarrassed parents. As I watched them lead her away, I made a silent vow to myself. This was the last time I'd let her drama overshadow my life. I was done being the responsible one, the understanding one, the one who always had to sacrifice. I was choosing myself, and I was choosing Tom, and that was all that mattered. For now. For a while, it seemed like I might actually keep that vow. Tom and I settled into married life, creating our own little world of love and laughter. We bought a small house, adopted a scruffy terrier mix from the local shelter, and spent our weekends exploring the city, trying new restaurants, and hosting game nights with friends. I heard little from my family, beyond the occasional superficial phone call from Mom. She'd talk about the weather, about the garden, about everything and nothing, carefully avoiding any mention of Anya or her troubled marriage. I knew they were struggling, but I didn't ask. I couldn't. I needed to protect my own peace. Then, almost exactly a year after our wedding, my phone rang. It was Mom, and she was crying. Again. Maya, she sobbed, her voice barely audible. It's Anya. Mark left her. A familiar wave of dread washed over me. I knew this was coming. I just didn't want to deal with it. What happened? I asked, my voice flat. Between sobs, she explained that Mark had found out about Anya's multiple affairs. He'd discovered a string of incriminating text messages, along with some rather compromising photos on her phone. He'd packed his bags and left, filing for divorce the same day. She's devastated, Maya, Mom wailed. She's acting out worse than ever. We don't know what to do. What is she doing? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. I didn't really want to know, but I had to ask. Everything, Mom sobbed. Drinking, drugs, staying out all night with different men. She's lost control. There was a long silence. Then, Mom took a shaky breath and said the words I knew were coming, the words I had dreaded hearing for years. The psychologist says she needs a change of scenery, Maya. A time away to heal. I closed my eyes, bracing myself. I knew what was coming. We were hoping. Could Anya stay with you for a while? Mom pleaded, her voice laced with desperation. Just until she gets back on her feet. Remember how we sent her to your grandmother so you could study for your exams? We need your help now. My head was spinning. No. I couldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. I had built a life. A good life. A life free from Anya's chaos. I wasn't going to let her destroy it. But then I thought of Tom, of his kind heart, his unwavering support. I knew he would want to help. And I knew that if I said no, I would never hear the end of it from my parents or from Anya. Let me talk to Tom, I said finally, my voice trembling. I'll call you back. After I hung up, I sat Tom down and explained the situation, trying to keep my voice calm, trying to downplay the dread that was clawing at my insides. He listened patiently, his brow furrowed with concern. He knew how I felt about Anya, how much she had hurt me over the years. What do you want to do? He asked, taking my hand. His eyes filled with a love that was both comforting and terrifying. I hesitated. I don't want her here, Tom. I really don't. But I don't know what else to do. My parents are desperate. He squeezed my hand. We can do this, Maya, he said, his voice reassuring. We can set boundaries. We can make sure she doesn't disrupt our lives. We'll get through it together. I looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of doubt, any hint of resentment, but all I saw was love and a fierce determination to protect me. "Okay," I said finally, my voice barely a whisper. "Okay, we'll do it." Anya arrived on a Tuesday, looking like a shadow of her former self. Her eyes were puffy from crying, her hair was a tangled mess, and she barely spoke above a whisper. For the first time in years, I felt a genuine pang of sympathy for my little sister. "Come on," I said gently, leading her to the guest room. "Let's get you settled in." Tom was amazing those first few days. He cooked Anya's favorite meals, engaged her in light conversation, and even took a day off work to help us go shopping for some new clothes to cheer her up. He was trying so hard to make her feel welcome, to make her feel like she belonged. But as the saying goes, no good deed goes unpunished. About a week into Anya's stay, I started noticing changes. Small things, at first. A lingering look here, an accidental brush against Tom there. I tried to brush it off as my imagination running wild, as my own insecurities getting the best of me. Then one day, I came home from work to find Anya parading around the living room in what could barely be called underwear. It was a skimpy, barely there thing, made of lace and desperation. Tom was sitting on the couch, looking incredibly uncomfortable. "Oh, hi, Maya," Anya exclaimed, feigning innocence, her eyes glittering with malice. "I was just about to take a shower. It's so hot today, isn't it?" Tom mumbled something incoherent and practically ran from the room, his face flushed. That night, I confronted Anya. "Look," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I know you're going through a tough time, but you need to respect our home and our marriage." She rolled her eyes. "God, Maya, don't be such a prude." I was just trying to cool off. I didn't buy it for a second. But I let it go. Big mistake. Over the next few days, Anya's behavior became more and more brazen. She'd accidentally walk in on Tom in the bathroom while he was showering. She'd bend over suggestively when he was around, accidentally flashing him a glimpse of cleavage. I was at my wit's end. I felt like I was going crazy, like I was living in a nightmare. Then came the day that broke the camel's back. I came home early from work, a migraine pounding behind my eyes. As I approached our apartment, I heard Anya's voice, loud and clear, coming from inside. "Come on, Tom," she was saying, her voice dripping with seduction. "Maya never has to know. Don't you want to have some real fun for once?" I burst through the door to find Anya pressed up against my husband, her hands on his chest, her lips inches from his. Tom looked horrified, his eyes wide with panic. "Maya!" he exclaimed, pushing Anya away. "This isn't what it looks like." Anya spun around, a look of faux shock on her face. "Oh my God, Maya. I'm so embarrassed." I just tripped, and Tom caught me. I saw red. Years of pent-up anger, resentment, and betrayal exploded inside me. "Get out," I said, my voice dangerously low. "Pack your things and get the hell out of my house. Now." Anya's face contorted with rage. "Fine," she spat. "I never wanted to stay in this dump anyway. You're pathetic, Maya. Always so boring, so frigid." She turned to Tom, who was standing there in shock, his face pale. "You could do so much better than her, you know," she purred. "A hot piece like me, instead of Ice Queen Maya." I grabbed her arm and dragged her to the guest room. "You have 5 minutes to pack, or I'm throwing your stuff out the window." As Anya scrambled to gather her things, hurling insults the whole time, I turned to Tom. He looked devastated, his eyes filled with guilt. "Maya, the first swear, nothing happened," he said, his voice trembling. "She's been trying for days, but I would never do anything to hurt you." I cut him off with a hug. "I know, Tom," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "I trust you. I'm so sorry I put you through this." We held each other, clinging to each other for support as we listened to Anya's continued tirade. Finally, she emerged from the room, suitcase in hand. "You'll regret this," she spat, glaring at both of us. "You'll both regret this." And then the door slammed behind her, As we stood there in our now quiet apartment, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was over. Anya was gone. And as I looked at Tom, his eyes filled with love and understanding, I realized something profound. The family I'd spent my whole life trying to please, trying to fix. They weren't my real family anymore. Tom was. And it was time I started putting our life, our marriage, first. I hadn't even finished my first cup of coffee the next morning when my phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID, Mom. I braced myself and answered. Maya, how could you? Mom's voice was shrill with anger. Kicking your own sister out onto the street. I thought we raised you better than that. A familiar wave of nausea washed over me. Here we go again. Mom, it's not what you think, I started, trying to keep my voice calm. But she cut me off. Anya told us everything. How you got jealous because she and Tom were getting along. How you made up lies about her to justify throwing her out. That's not true, Mom, I protested, my voice rising. Anya tried to seduce Tom. She was walking around half naked, throwing herself at him. She even propositioned him. There was a pause. Then Dad's voice came on the line, his tone cold and accusatory. Now, Maya, don't you think you're exaggerating a bit? We know Anya has her issues, but she's family. And family supports each other, no matter what. Something inside me snapped. Years of pent-up frustration, resentment, and pain came pouring out in a torrent of angry words. Support? Where was your support when I was trying to study for college, and Anya was making my life hell? Where was your support when you cut me off financially, because you were too busy catering to Anya's every whim? I took a deep breath, trying to regain control. I've spent my entire life trying to understand and make allowances for Anya. And I'm done. I'm done being the responsible one, the one who always has to sacrifice. You raised her to be this way, and now you can deal with the consequences. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then Dad spoke, his voice icy. If that's how you feel, Maya, maybe it's best we don't speak for a while. And don't be surprised if the rest of the family feels the same way. Once they hear about this, I laughed, a bitter, humorless laugh. Is that supposed to be a threat? Go ahead. Tell them whatever version of the story makes you feel better about your parenting failures. And with that, I hung up. True to my parents' word, the calls started coming in. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all of them expressing their shock and disappointment in my cruel treatment of Anya. How could you abandon your sister in her time of need? My Aunt Linda scolded, her voice dripping with disapproval. I always knew you were jealous of Anya, my cousin Mike messaged me, his words cutting like knives. But this is a new low. I tried explaining the truth to the first few callers, but it quickly became clear that their minds were already made up. Anya and my parents had spun a tale of my jealousy and cruelty, and the rest of the family had lapped it up without question. They wanted to believe the worst about me, because it validated their own flawed views of Anya and my role within the family. The final straw came when I logged onto Facebook. There, in black and white, was a post from Anya, dripping with self-pity and manipulative victimhood. Heartbroken, it read, "My own sister threw me out when I needed her most. I guess blood isn't always thicker than water. Family drama #betrayed. The comments section was a cesspool of family members and old acquaintances expressing their sympathy for Anya and their disgust with me. People the first had known my whole life were calling me selfish, cruel, and heartless. My finger hovered over the keyboard. I could respond, tell my side of the story, defend myself against their accusations. But what was the point? They'd already made up their minds. They wanted to believe Anya because it was easier than facing the truth. With a heavy heart, I began blocking numbers and unfriending relatives on social media. It hurt, cutting ties with people I'd known my whole life. It felt like I was severing a part of myself, erasing my own history. But as I looked over at Tom, who had stayed by my side through all of this, his eyes filled with love and unwavering support. I knew I was making the right choice. I was choosing myself. I was choosing my sanity. I was choosing my future. I was drawing a line in the sand. And on one side of that line was my toxic, dysfunctional family, clinging to their lies and their enabling behavior. And on the other side was me, standing tall and proud, finally free from their suffocating influence. It was time to build my own family, a family based on love, respect, and mutual support. And I wasn't looking back. In the weeks that followed the fallout with my family, I felt like I was walking through a fog. The pain of being ostracized by my own relatives was raw and ever present. It was a constant ache in my chest, a dull throbbing in my head. I found myself replaying conversations in my mind, second-guessing my decisions, wondering if I could have done things differently. I struggled to sleep, haunted by nightmares of Anya's angry face, of my parents' disappointed stares, of the endless stream of hateful comments on Facebook. I lost my appetite, my clothes hanging loosely on my frame. I withdrew from my friends, afraid of burdening them with my problems. But amidst the darkness, there was one beacon of light, my grandmother. "Maya, dear," she said during one of our weekly phone calls, her voice strong and unwavering, "I want you to know that I believe you. I know Anya, and I know you. You did the right thing." Tears welled up in my eyes. Hearing those words from her, from the one person who had always seen me, who had always believed in me, was like a balm on my wounded soul. "Thanks, Grandma," I choked out, my voice thick with emotion. "You don't know how much that means to me," she chuckled softly. "Oh, I think I do. Now, tell me about your week. How's that wonderful husband of yours?" And just like that, she pulled me back from the brink. She reminded me of what was important, of what truly mattered. She reminded me that I wasn't alone, that I had someone who loved me unconditionally, someone who would always be there for me no matter what. She didn't dwell on the drama, on the negativity. She focused on the positive, on the things that brought me joy. She asked about my job, about my friends, about my plans for the future. She reminded me that my life was still worth living, that I still had so much to offer the world. With her support, I slowly started to heal. I started to sleep better, to eat more regularly, to reconnect with my friends. I started to focus on my work, on my hobbies, on the things that made me happy. Tom was incredible during this time. He was patient, understanding, and endlessly supportive. He held me when I cried, listened when I needed to talk, and distracted me when I needed to escape. He never judged me, never criticized me, never pressured me to do anything I wasn't ready for. He simply loved me with a fierce and unwavering devotion that made me feel safe and secure. As the weeks turned into months, I started to find a new kind of peace. It wasn't the naive, carefree peace I had known before. It was a deeper, more resilient peace, forged in the fires of adversity. I had faced my demons. I had stood up for myself, and I had survived. I was stronger now, more self-assured, more confident in my own abilities. Yes, I had lost my family, but I had gained something even more valuable, myself. I had learned to love myself, to respect myself, to put my own needs first. I had learned that I was worthy of happiness and that I didn't need anyone's approval to live my life on my own terms. I had built a new foundation for my life, a foundation based on love, trust, and self-respect, and I was finally ready to build a future on top of it. Months passed, then a year. Tom and I settled into a comfortable, loving routine. We traveled, exploring new cities and cultures. We pursued our careers, supporting each other's ambitions, and celebrating each other's successes. We even started talking about starting a family of our own, a thought that both excited and terrified me. I heard snippets about my family through the grapevine. A distant cousin mentioned that Anya had moved back in with our parents, that she was still struggling to find her way, that she was still causing them endless grief. I tried to push those thoughts aside, focusing on my own life, on my own happiness. I couldn't save them. I could only save myself. Then, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, as I was browsing through a local bookstore, my phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID, and my heart skipped a beat. It was a number I hadn't seen in over a year. My parents. A wave of anxiety washed over me. I knew this couldn't be good. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hello," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Maya?" It was my mother, her voice choked with tears. "Maya, we need your help." A familiar weight settled in my stomach. "Here we go again. What's wrong?" I asked, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. Between sobs, she explained that Anya had spiraled out of control. She was bringing strange men home, throwing wild parties, and had even physically threatened our parents when they tried to intervene. "She kicked us out, Maya." Dad's voice came on the line, his voice trembling with fear and exhaustion. "We're staying at a motel. We don't know what to do. Can you come talk to her? Maybe she'll listen to you." I closed my eyes, feeling a mix of emotions wash over me: anger, pity, frustration, but mostly nothing. The well of my empathy had finally run dry. I had given them everything I had, and they had thrown it all away. I had sacrificed my own happiness for them, and they had never appreciated it. "No," I said quietly, my voice firm and unwavering. "I can't." "But Maya," Mom started to protest, her voice rising in desperation. "She's your sister. We're your parents. We need you." I cut her off, my voice cold and detached. "No, Mom. I'm done. I've spent my entire life cleaning up Anya's messes, making excuses for her behavior, and when I finally stood up for myself, you all turned your backs on me. This is your problem now. You raised her. You enabled her. Now you have to deal with the consequences." Before they could respond, I hung up the phone. And then, with a sense of finality, I blocked their numbers. It was over. I was finally free. I walked out of the bookstore, feeling lighter than I had in years. The weight that had been crushing me for so long had finally lifted. I was finally free to live my own life, without the constant burden of my family's problems. Tom found me on the couch a little while later, staring into space, a faint smile playing on my lips. "Everything okay?" he asked, concern etched on his face. I looked up at him and smiled, a real smile, a smile that came from deep within my soul. "You know what?" I said, taking his hand. "For the first time in my life, I think everything is actually okay." As we sat there holding hands, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Yes, I had lost the family I was born into, but I had gained so much more. I had Tom, my rock, my partner, my best friend. I had my grandmother who loved me unconditionally. And most importantly, I had myself, stronger and more self-assured than ever before. The next day, I called my grandmother. "Hey, Grandma," I said, my voice filled with warmth and affection. "How would you like to come visit for a while?" Tom and I were thinking of redecorating the guest room, and we could use your expert eye. Her joy was palpable through the phone. "Oh, Maya, I'd love to," she exclaimed. "When should I come?" As I hung up, making plans for my grandmother's visit, I realized something profound. This was what family should be. People who support you, love you, and bring joy to your life. People who lift you up instead of dragging you down. And as I looked forward to the future, I knew that it would be different, better than anything I had ever imagined. I was finally free to create my own family, my own happiness, my own destiny. And for the first time in my life, I felt truly, completely at peace. I was okay. More than okay. I was finally home.